Cillín translates roughly to little church. Cillíní are the unofficial graveyards for unbaptised babies. Not only babies there's also drowning victims, because the mythology around drowning was that your soul was stolen. Murderers, particularly unrepentant murderers, were buried there. And strangers, I don't know who they are. They buried people whose spiritual state was unknown or unvalidated by the church. It's documented from about the 7th century up until about the 1970s. There are 2,000 or so documented across the country, and many, many more undocumented. Typically, it was the father, sometimes the grandfather. The day the baby died, they would take the baby and they would bury them in these remote locations at night, away from support of a family and a community. The engagement stemmed from my own personal desire to make images, but also concerns I had around mortality and ritual. I had had a couple of incidents with my heart, and my own mortality kind of loomed large. And I took, in response to this, to photographing at night on tops of mountains and in bogs and forests. So when I discovered the phenomenon of cillíní, I was introduced to it by the writer, the poet Mannion, who's collaborated with me on the show, along with the archaeologist Marion Dowd. Una brought me to one Cillín in Ballydolly, and I was completely taken. I went, I have to come back here and check this out. And when I came back at night, as was my wont, but it was when I was walking down the hill in the dark, I thought, oh, these fathers did this. I'm walking, these fathers did this walk. So I knew I had a project at that point, and I knew I had to find some way of making these invisible histories, find some way of presencing them. I want us to own that we as a culture did this. I did want the mother's voice in the room, and Una Mannion's poem was the obvious point to use. I like it when it speaks to the fuller body. So I take it down from the head and bring it to the heart, and that's where it feels more like an encounter. So they're a little lower than perhaps gallery standard issue. The rooms are darker than most galleries would be, and that's also trying to recreate a bit of the experience when you're on the hill or in the forest, that people slow down actually when they're in a darker space and they move. They don't see it quickly. They're kind of mysterious images until you get up close. There's very particular energies around these places, and sometimes they're very quiet. They're very dark and very still, tough to go to, tough to stay in. You can only stay there a while, you have to leave. They're just profoundly sad.